YouTube, I am 307 pounds. I'm not fat yet. I'm a little fluffier, obviously, but I have abs. I still have some lines in my quads, decent vascularity everywhere. Being 300 pounds in this kind of conditioning is honestly a huge deal for me. Not just because of what it means about my bodybuilding progress, but also I've wanted to be 300 pounds with abs for going on a decade. I remember back in the day watching Jay Cutler, watching Ronnie Coleman, watching Rich Piana. I watched all of their videos on YouTube, literally parked outside the gym, getting ready to go train, feeling so inspired that it was even possible to be 300 pounds, walking around with abs, and I wanted nothing more than to be one of those freaks. Now, I'm not saying I'm anywhere close to those guys in a bodybuilding sense, obviously. It's what I'm striving for, it's what I've been striving for, and to be weighing in at over 300 pounds first thing in the morning, to me, is an extra special milestone. When I started training, I was 125 pounds. I'm 5'10", so that was not a good look for me. I remember the first goal I set for myself was just to be 165. I just wanted to be a regular weight for my height, and I wanted to be relatively lean with more muscle than the average person. As I put on those first 20 pounds and then some, I was hooked, and I realized that 165 was not gonna cut it. I remember being on the bodybuilding.com forums back in the day. You guys remember those? I remember there was a feature on there where you could set a goal for yourself in terms of body weight and type of physique, and it would tell you roughly how long it would take to reach that goal. And I remember the way you selected the type of physique that you wanted was you picked between various silhouettes. The silhouette that I picked basically looked like Big Randy, and the label that popped up that bodybuilding.com had assigned to this silhouette said IFBB Pro. Now, for the next couple years, I was just kind of trying to get big, training hard, but not very tight with my nutrition at all. I put on weight, I put on size. It definitely wasn't pretty. It was definitely pretty sloppy at this point. I remember the first big milestone I hit was 240, and I was a pretty chubby 240. From 240, I cut all the way down to 210. That was my first big cut. Was decently lean at that weight. And then after that, I went full on bulk. I managed to hit 280, but when I say it was sloppy, it was pretty gross. From there, I did my first ever bodybuilding show, and I lost 70 pounds. I was on stage about 210. I should have been probably about 200. I didn't have a coach for that show. I didn't know how to pose. I prepped myself. That's the show that I don't ever talk about. This was back in 2016. At this point, I realized bodybuilding was a lot more complicated than I originally thought. I got really into powerlifting. I enjoyed training super heavy. I didn't like how my prep affected my training because, again, I was prepping myself and did not know what I was doing. I didn't realize that there was a way to prep in which you don't have to completely tank your performance and have garbage workouts for 3 months. So I pursued competitive powerlifting for 4 years. I had a blast. I lifted a ton of weight, 600 pounds on my back on the regular, over 650 on the deadlift, over 500 on bench press. The thing that I remember most about those days is that when I was training, I trained with zero fear. I could get in a squat rack, get underneath 600 pounds, unrack that sucker, and just squat until I couldn't squat anymore. I was not nervous about hitting failure with that weight. I was not nervous about bailing out. I just wanted to move heavy weight all the time. It was a super fun experience, would not trade it for the world. But at the end of those 4 years, I was starting to get beat up. It was a lot of wear and tear on my body. So I hit a wall with it. And in 2020, a certain podcast came on YouTube, and I started watching Fouad Abiad and Luke Sando talk about bodybuilding. It was the first time I had ever heard two pros talk about how they make a living in the sport. And it was the first time I even realized that that was a possibility, that that's something that I could pursue. And that ultimately is what inspired me to get back into competing. And then I fell head over heels in love with it all over again. My next show, I did classic physique, believe it or not. My stage weight was 187. The thing that really sold me on bodybuilding though was the rebound after the show. I was super over dieted and super stringy and super flat. So when I started to eat, I grew like a weed. I was 230 in what felt like a few weeks. I was still fairly lean. I started to feel big. I started to actually look like a bodybuilder. Keep in mind, even though I'd been training for several years at this point, this was the first time I had actually committed to eating like a bodybuilder, sleeping like a bodybuilder, breathing like a bodybuilder. I was actually living the bodybuilder lifestyle for pretty much the first time ever. That off season, I topped out at 260. From there, I did my next string of shows. I weighed in at about 212. Won my first overall at the NPC Big Sky Championships in Missoula, Montana. After that show, again, awesome rebound. Got all the way up to 270. After that, I prepped for Emerald Cup. I came down to low 220s, 223, 224. Won the overall, went on to USA's, placed 5th. Now this brings us to last year's off season. I got all the way up to about 300 pounds for the first time. Couldn't really hold it. It was definitely a sloppier 300 than where I'm at now, so I kind of didn't count it as a true solid 300. And then I got down to 256, which was my most recent stage weight at Nationals. That brings us to now. I am 307 in the morning. Training is the best it's ever been. So that's my story, and that's why 300 pounds is such an important milestone to me. It's a dream that I've had for a really long time, and now I'm here. My goals, my dreams, my aspirations have only gotten higher, and I have a lot more that I want to achieve in this sport. But I know I would regret it if I didn't just take a beat, take a pause to acknowledge that I made it to 300 pounds with abs. I'm holding it consistently. I've been over 300 for going on a month now. And that's something that I've wanted, honestly, since I was 20 years old. I'm 30 now, and it's cool knowing that 20-year-old me, if he met 30-year-old me, would actually be pretty stoked. The primary reason I tell that story is to demonstrate it doesn't matter how tiny your starting point is. And this goes for anything in life, not just bodybuilding. It doesn't matter how far away your goal is. There's still a way to achieve it as long as you're consistent and you really want it that bad. As cliche as it may sound, at this point, consistency is the key. If you string 3, 5, 8, 10 years together like that, regardless of how crazy your goal is, you're gonna be a hell of a lot further along than maybe you even dreamed that you could be. So that's my 2 cents. That's my inspiration for the day. If you guys enjoyed the video, give me a thumbs up, drop me a comment. Let me know if you relate, if you also have undergone a pretty crazy transformation or pursued a goal that hard and ultimately were able to achieve it. I would love to hear about it. If you enjoyed the video and want to see some more, hit the subscribe button, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.